Hi guys, welcome to the channel. So today we're going to be looking at a piece I actually read a few months back, but I recently fell back in love with because I watched this the Soviet film adaptation. The book's called The Heart of a Dog by Bulgakov, and if you've heard of this author before, it's probably because of his world famous novel The Master and Margarita. This text, however, was written probably a few decades before, and whilst it's less well known, it contains probably the same level of wit and satire as his later novel. So I'll usually start these videos by giving you guys a bit of an overview of the narrative, what actually happens in the book, and then we can talk through some key themes and the messages which Bulgakov is trying to convey. And throughout we'll look at some key quotes so that at the end you guys should have a really clear idea of the book and some of its key ideas. So this story is particularly bizarre. It's a bit of a science fiction, but first let's talk about the context. It's set in Soviet Russia, and the book was written in 1925, so this is about a decade after the revolution. So this is really a time of dramatic, social, intellectual, and political change, and this is made all the more acute in the setting in Moscow, which is obviously the epicenter of said change. The story really revolves around two key protagonists, Dr. Philip Filipovich and this stray dog who's called Sharik, which means, I think it's a play on the word ball in Russian. Filipovich is this world-renowned, slightly mad scientist who decides to play God, essentially. So he adopts this stray dog Sharik from the street and decides to operate on him by drilling a hole, essentially, into his skull and inserting the pituitary gland of a recently deceased man. And it's all part of a experiment to try and find where the source of the human soul is, this sort of thing. So the experiment is an astounding success. And over the coming months, Sharik starts to recover but develop pretty much into a fully formed man. I mean, his fur drops off, his speech develops, his spine erects, and he develops this sort of infantile form of rationality. With this comes Sharik's response to his contemporary society, right? So the socialist state. He self-adopts the full title Polygrafovich Sharikov, which is sort of a mockery of early Soviet naming rituals or whatever. And he becomes an integral part of the state. He becomes the sort of head of the sub-department for the control of stray animals, and obviously a member of the party and the housing committee and all these bureaucratic roles. So there's obviously a joke here in that he used to be a dog and now his work involves essentially going around strangling cats. But there's also a more somber part, which is this job is essentially removing undesirables from the street, which was actually a very real part of Soviet society. Now, of course, this book was written a decade after the revolution, but it was also a decade before the horrendous purging of Soviet society, where people were murdered and arrested or deemed undesirable and enemies of the state. So as you can see, this is one of the many ways that Bulgakov seeks to reveal Soviet life through this sort of fatalist comedy. So as Sharik develops this sort of infantile consciousness, proletariat consciousness, he comes incredibly into conflict with the doctor, who's slightly more bourgeois, more sophisticated, and not really fond of this social change. But really, the turning point of the piece arrives when Sharik decides to denounce the doctor to the secret police, thereby becoming perhaps a archetype of what the doctor hates most about the revolutionary change. As a response, the doctor and his assistant Baumanthal then decide to reverse the procedure, so that when the secret police come, along with the housing committee, everybody asking about the disappearance of their comrade, they see that the experiment of the doctors was supposedly a failure in the end, as Sharik slowly reverses back into the dog. I mean, you can see in this picture here the housing committee and the chief of the secret police looking quite shocked. So that's really the narrative, and there's quite a few important themes that we've already touched upon that we can tease out now. So the first one is the problem of power being in the hands of those who are not really fit to wield it. So indeed, Bulgakov makes this quite clear in the quote here, where he says that he laments that someone who essentially eats toothpaste is trying to lecture him on class rights. As is normally the issue with Bulgakov, there's a humorous side to this and also a bit more of an ugly side. The humorous side is seen with the rather acute and sort of self-appointed housing committee, who make a scene even before Sharik's transformation by clamoring into the doctor's apartment, demanding he gives up his rooms. I mean, they're poorly dressed, they're dirty, generally making a racket through communal chants and this sort. But there's also a slightly more ugly side to this, which is epitomized through Sharik, who becomes a sort of evidence of the autocratic bureaucrat that you can see in the early Soviet era. I mean, his job is essentially killing cats. He takes Baumenthal's romantic interest on dates and demands sex in exchange for keeping a job. And towards the film's climax, he actually draws a gun on the doctor and assistant, threatens to kill, and obviously the pinnacle of his brutishness comes with the eventual denunciation. The second theme is also something we've touched a little bit upon, which is state-sponsored violence. And we've talked about this piece being a precursor to the purges and mass denunciations and the like. But these themes were already very much developing in this period, and the book really does try and satire this. For example, I suppose this can be seen in the name of the criminal from whom they get the pituitary gland for Sharek. The criminal is an alcoholic and a thug, and his name is Chugunkin, which is a derivation of the Russian word for cast iron, chugun. So it's obviously a word play on the name Stalin, which is man of steel. So perhaps making the point that Stalin is akin to a thug, I'm not sure. Another key bit of context that we haven't really discussed yet is that the revolutionary period saw an intellectual interest in the development of the new Soviet man. So this is really where medicine, technology really take to the fore as Soviet thinkers really seek to identify the perfect man for the new age. Transformation and the role of science is therefore really crucial to this satire. Indeed, it's been hypothesized that the Doctor's character is taken from the very real Dr. Sergei Vonorov, who was really widely known in this period for treating Western Europeans who would collect in his waiting room and inject them with monkey glands, seeking to sort of increase their virility, supposedly. This book certainly draws from these attempts to create a new man for communist activity, but it also draws on the intelligentsia's attempts to rise the proletarian condition from their squalor and create a healthier workforce. For example, the Soviet intelligentsia wrote quite extensively on hygiene, cleanliness, and the like. It really, therefore, draws on two types of transformation. I think this is what E. Lawson calls the two modern Prometheuses. So the first is seen through Comrade Shonda, the head of the housing committee, who teaches Sharek, and through literature and really aims to bring forth an informed citizen, an informed comrade. And there's the professor who tries to sort of refine Sharek's brutal proletarian ways through essentially reason, right? But on top of all of this, and perhaps the most crucial theme, which sort of pervades through all the aforementioned topics, is his reflection on human nature and decency. And this is really the bottom line, which puts him at odds with the state that he believed heavily used intimidation and terror as a means of disciplining society. Is indeed Sharek's animal nature combined with human maliciousness, which perhaps helps him to progress so readily in Soviet society. And this is perhaps the most famous quote of the book, where he says, "The whole horror of the situation is that he now has a human heart, not a dog's heart, and that's about the rottenest in all creation." By contrast, the Doctor is really fervently against any violence, and this much is evidenced when Baumenthal repeatedly tries to discipline Sharek and hit him, whereas the Doctor says nobody should be whipped. Remember that once and for all, neither man nor animal can be influenced by anything but suggestion. To conclude, therefore, I think the book is pretty incredible, actually, and pretty insightful. I mean, even from just a literary perspective, it's quite astounding. I mean, the book's first few chapters are written wryly and from the perspective of a dog, which requires quite some imagination and a strange level of empathy. I mean, depicting a dog and how he transforms into a human is also quite the literary achievement, but it's even more astounding when you see the film, which I'd recommend everybody to watch. The book is more importantly, however, a cutting critique of Soviet society, ranging from the ridiculousness of a system in which a dog with a man's intelligence can become an important and functioning member of the state, to a doctor's disbelief at having to answer for those who perceive themselves as oppressed, but in reality are just nothing more than irresponsible and brutish thugs, according to him. Indeed, one of his comments says that ruin, therefore, is not caused by lavatories, but is something that starts in people's heads. Every one of them needs to hit himself on the back of the head, and then when he has knocked out all the hallucinations and gets on with sweeping up backyards, which is his real job, all this ruin will automatically disappear. And that's really the end of it, folks. I mean, I really hope you enjoyed this first video, and if you did, please leave a like so that I know you want to see more. And feel free just to also hit the subscribe button so you can keep up to date with any new videos that I do. But other than that, I wish you kind regards, and I'll see you in the next one. If you want to comment down below what book you think I should do next, then I'll be happy to oblige. Cheers, thank you very much.